A lot of the colleagues and state representatives that I had been working very closely with on human rights, on international humanitarian law, were suddenly beating the drum of war in the United Nations.
Ousman Noor is a lawyer who was sacked from a high-profile NGO job for speaking about Palestine.
Hello, Ousman again from Stop Killer Robots.
When Hamas's 7th of October attack took place, Ousman was working for a large international disarmament campaign supported by organizations like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch called Stop Killer Robots. When it became clear that Israel's assault on Gaza was going to be devastating for the civilian population, he suggested the campaign advocates for them, but his plea fell on deaf ears.
They cut the food, the water, the gas, and I said to my colleagues, let's talk to our own campaign about this. We have this civil society network, and I suggested that we should advocate for a humanitarian corridor. But my boss essentially silenced me and said we shouldn't talk about this. I decided to make a personal tweet.
We have been witnessing the premeditated ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. And I call upon colleagues, friends, representatives of states to use their voice to end occupation and end apartheid now.
Word got round that this tweet had been sent by me, and I was suspended from the campaign. I asked for reasons, and the response was for me to be terminated immediately. My name was removed from the website. My email account was terminated. My UN grounds pass was revoked. And then the next day, my boss sent out an email to everybody, including diplomats, saying Ousman has left the campaign.
Ousman's role as government relations manager was based out of Geneva, around the UN milieu, and through that he built relationships with many Western diplomats and officials, which meant the topic of Israel was usually off limits.
For decades, we have been dehumanizing certain people. When we saw wars going on in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, it's almost as though it became normalized. So there's almost an expectation that they are supposed to suffer. And I think that normalization has affected all of us, including in the NGO community. We have to accept that certain Western states are very, very sensitive about protecting Israel and are always going to side with Israel. And it's an ideological thing, actually. I think that the nature of how I was removed speaks to that. It was to cleanse me from the organization in order for them to reconcile their relationships with those Western states. Don't worry about him. He's not one of us anymore.
We refuse to relinquish our decision-making to machines.
Stop Killer Robots has more recently highlighted the situation in Gaza as the scale of atrocities has become undeniable. But for many years, the disarmament campaign did very little work regarding Israel, a country engaged in the world's longest military occupation and also a world leader in high-tech weapons, surveillance and defense systems. Ousman has now co-founded a new organization, the Civilian Agenda, and is using his experience and knowledge to carry on challenging the use of killer robots in the UN.
I'd like to make a statement concerning the catastrophic use of artificial intelligence by Israel in Gaza, converting humans into data to make selection processes to exercise force, essentially annihilating entire population by the press of a button. Israel is using artificial intelligence to commit genocide in Gaza. Stop Killer Robots is not stating that the systems being used by Israel for this genocide are autonomous weapon systems. They talk about systems of increasing concern, increasing levels of autonomy. But if we are going to prohibit and regulate these weapons, which is the whole discussion going on at the United Nations, we have to be able to say these are autonomous weapon systems. Because if we don't, we're actually validating them. We're saying that these ones are okay. And we've also known that they're using and testing these weapons in Palestine. So it is not surprising that Israel is using these technologies to commit genocide now. These technologies, primary victims of them right now are people in Gaza, but they will proliferate.
Before getting involved in disarmament advocacy, Ousman worked for 10 years as a barrister specializing in refugee and human rights law in the UK. He tried to come to an affable agreement with Stop Killer Robots about his termination, but they refused to engage, so he started a lawsuit for unfair dismissal against them.
The most shocking thing after my termination was how many people from within the campaign and within humanitarian disarmament NGOs that said the same thing had happened to them. Why I am determined to succeed in the legal case is to empower such people. Feel free to speak your truth, especially if our culture is based on our peace building and based on our determination to speak out against oppression. We then need to have that culture within our own community. What we've been seeing over the last 6 months has been a cultural revolution. I think that now criticizing the actions of Israel are becoming mainstream. Why has that happened? It's because people have been speaking out, and it's been necessary for us to collectively speak out for that cultural revolution to change things.